Hello, 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 and welcome back to BSB Preview. We are going to give all our lovely attendees a couple of minutes to filter into the Zoom. Thank you so much for being here, for joining us, and for rejoining us. If you are, my name is Sandy Lowe. I'm the senior editor here at Bold Strokes Books, and I am here with four amazing authors. We have Julie Cannon, Ashley Bartlett, McCluer, Vaun, and Suzie Clarke this round. They are promoting their January 2021 releases. As most of you will know, I need a minute to set up the Facebook Live, so I have asked all our lovely panelists an opening question. And that is, if one of your characters was going to give you advice on how to cope with 2020, what would that advice be? I'm going to start with Julie, and then she is going to pass the question to an author of her choice, and they will pass it on to someone else, etc., etc. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Sandy. I think, and that was a tough one. I would say my character, Matt, would tell me live in the now, not in the past, not in what we can't do anymore, but live in what we've got right now today. Try not to look too far ahead, but live in the now. And I will pass it over to Ashley.
All right, so for those who don't know, my character is a drug dealer. And she deals prescription drugs, so I think that her best advice would be Xanax. But since she's not a drug dealer who generally engages in her own product, she probably would just go for a nice beer and hanging out with her friends, because she's only got like 2, and hanging out with her cat, because she's got 1. That's really all you need. I'm going to pass it over to Suzie.
Okay, thank you. All right. I would have, as I thought about this, it's not one of the main characters. Rachel and Claire are the 2 main characters, but Tilly is one of their best friends. And Tilly is a singer, and she lives in Cleveland, and Tilly she almost has no filters. So I would say for Tilly, she'd just say, you know, I'm coming over, we're going to have a lot of parties, and we're going to drink. And that's pretty much her attitude, is let's just party and drink through this. We can get through this. And I'll pass it over to McCluer.
Thank you. There's 2 main characters in the book I'm going to read from. One is named Garrett. One is named Tess. And I think Tess would probably give the best advice. And she would say, focus on the small things that bring you joy. And I think that's what she would say as a remedy to get through 2020. Focus on the small things.
That's all good advice. All right. Anybody want to read first? Anybody who really wants to read first? Otherwise, I'm going to pick someone. Nope. All right. I'm going to pick McCluer to read first.
I was going to say, we're all chickens, and you're going to make me go first.
Oh, you can do it.
I'm going to be reading from this book, which comes out in January, called The Mandolin Lunch. Garrett Allen stood in the middle of the upstairs bedroom with an empty duffel bag drooping from a strap across her shoulder. Welcome to the beginning of another end. She and Jillian were over, finished, done. All that remained was the last scene and then exit stage right. Garrett exhaled a long, slow breath. The antique oak dresser squeaked loudly as she tugged the drawer free, and a picture frame on top of the dresser wobbled and loudly plunked face down. Balancing the drawer on her hip with one arm, she righted the small frame. It was a photo of Jillian and her at a black tie fundraiser for the Human Rights Campaign, right after they'd first started dating. She shifted the drawer, holding it in front of her as she studied the photograph. Jillian had insisted on buying her this dark suit. She was wearing a sleek black dress, and her slender, pale arm was draped through Garrett's casually as they posed for the photo. From the outside, they probably looked like the perfect match. The truth was never that simple. Relationships were nothing but layered complications beneath the veneer of attraction. Maybe that was the problem. Garrett got so distracted by the attraction part that she failed to notice all the ways a relationship would never work in the long term. Half the time, she wondered if it really was all her fault, if relationships failed because she aspired to be the person she thought her partner wanted her to be, but rather than the person she really was. Usually, she was able to maintain the "I'm a grown-up" facade for no more than a couple of months. That's when problems started to show up. Luckily, Garrett had a system, more accurately, an exit strategy for when the problems began to reach a critical level, as they inevitably did. Garrett's basic strategy for her own sanity was to keep the level of commitment limited to one drawer. Regardless of how in the beginning she thought every relationship would last forever, anything more than one drawer of clothing stored at your girlfriend's place, and you were bound to lose something valuable, including your autonomy. Everything Garrett needed to pack was in this one dresser drawer, except for the suit that mocked her from the closet. She should never have allowed Jillian to buy it. She'd looked like Jane Bond the entire evening, a complete imposter. Garrett had given Jillian the wrong impression right from the start. She'd let Jillian think her wardrobe and her life needed improvement. Both probably did, but any improvement was bound to be short-lived because the truth was Garrett liked herself the way she was. Besides, she'd always thought that if you took something apart, separated it into too many smaller pieces, they never fit back together again. Better not to put things under a microscope, especially messy things like needs and feelings. Besides, Garrett didn't really want to change. With a sweeping motion, she upended the drawer into the duffel bag on the floor at her feet. Go ahead, leave. That sounded like a dare. Jillian, her ex-girlfriend, as of 5 minutes ago, stood in the bedroom doorway with her hands on her hips. Wasn't that exactly what she was in the process of doing, leaving? You're so immature. Sticks and stones, Jillian, sticks and stones. Garrett wasn't going to get pulled into another argument she would inevitably lose. This 6-month relationship had lasted 4 months longer than it should have. She chided herself for not packing up her single drawer sooner. She glanced up at Jillian's reflection in the mirror over the dresser. Her pencil skirt and dark fitted blazer hugged her subtle curves. She'd obviously come straight from the law office, whereas Garrett was in her usual "I'm an artist and I work from home" attire. Her faded ripped jeans were only one rung above flannel lounge pants. Her short hair was askew, falling into her eyes, and she'd only just noticed a big coffee stain on her gray t-shirt. Perfect. She and Jillian were a case study in opposites, and why, even if opposites initially attract, they inevitably repel each other like inverted magnets. I should have known you'd never really commit to this relationship, Jillian said. Just like everything else in your life, you're afraid of anything that gets too serious, afraid to actually need someone, or heaven forbid, for them to need you. Jillian didn't even raise her voice. She was in lawyer mode, calm, tactical, and self-righteous. Garrett wondered if it was tiresome for Jillian to always be right. You know, that's not entirely true. Garrett zipped the duffel with one swift swipe. Which part? I do take things seriously. She stood and faced Jillian with the bag in her hand. Look, I'm doing you a favor, Jillian. Be honest. You're not even that upset about this. And now you can go find someone who's a better fit for you, someone who makes 6 figures and drives a BMW. That's who you really want, and you and I both know it. That sounded a little callous, but it was also true. So I should thank you, then? Well, I mean, only if you really want to. She didn't mean to sound like a jerk, but Garrett feared she was treading very close to jerk territory. They'd been arguing a lot, and she just wasn't in the mood to argue anymore. It was all such a waste of mental energy. Jillian deserved a serious girlfriend, a girlfriend who'd lie in bed on Sunday and read the New York Times with her, a girlfriend who liked her coffee in a French press. Jillian deserved a serious adult girlfriend, an actual grown-up, and that was not Garrett. She knew it, and she was sure Jillian knew it too. This whole breakup scene was simply a formality for something that should have happened weeks ago. Garrett paused to give the moment some air, to give Jillian a chance to get any remaining grievances off her chest. When Jillian said nothing, Garrett slipped past her and trotted down the stairs. At this point, Garrett wasn't even angry. She just wanted to be somewhere quiet, alone with her thoughts. She tossed the faded canvas duffel bag onto the passenger seat and climbed into her vintage Volvo station wagon. The boxy 1980 wagon was a hand-me-down from her grandmother, proof that she was suffering for her art. In fact, suffering to the point of being unable to afford a car from this decade, let alone a BMW. Garrett gave the car a moment to warm up and then eased away from the curb. She didn't want to make a fast getaway. She didn't need to. It wasn't as if she was running away, although the odometer, which currently read 350,000 miles, might tell a different story.
Awesome. I love that. But Missouri Vaun, is this book a romance?
You know, you have to figure out you're with Mrs. Wrong before you find Mrs. Right, and that's where this story starts.
I see. I like that. I like the insight that we get into Garrett in this scene and all the various ways in which she is ill-equipped to be in a relationship and to find love. And yet I think it's going to happen for Garrett. I'm hopeful.
Yeah, they're just the wrong fit, you know? That's all it is.
All right, there is someone else out there for her, and you have to buy the book to find out who it is.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, a romance that starts with a breakup. I don't know. I guess maybe that was.
No, I love it. You defy expectations. Awesome. All right, next up, we are going to hear from Suzie Clarke. Do a quick intro for your series, too,
Sure.
so everyone knows what you're reading from, and then you can start reading whenever you like.
Okay. The book is Shadows of Steel. I do not have a book. Like I said before, I'm in South Carolina, so the books are in Ohio that they arrived while we were gone. So I'm going to hold up. I have a T-shirt, so I'm going to hold up what Shadows of Steel looks like. So here it is, Shadows of Steel. It is an action adventure, obviously fiction. It is the second book. Shadows of Steel is the second book in the series. Moonshadow was first. This book takes place just shortly after the Moonshadow series ended. It's in Cleveland, Ohio. And like I said, it's not long after Moonshadow left off. So I'm going to read two scenes, a brief scene with Rachel and Claire, who are the two main characters. And then I'm going to read a scene from a person who is Rachel's nemesis, Eshi and Miko. So I'm going to start here with Rachel and Claire. The sun's full light flooded the bedroom. Rachel blinked and stretched, feeling Claire press against her as Claire's hand slid over her stomach and up. Claire leaned in and kissed Rachel's ear, her breath sending a shudder down into Rachel's core. "What time do you have to be at the downtown at the Federal Building?" Claire whispered. 10 o'clock. "You've already met with the FBI and the MI6 agent a couple of times about the program just installed. It's going to be okay, isn't it?" Rachel turned over toward her when she heard the concern in Claire's voice. She kissed Claire's shoulder and then looked up into her face, seeing the pout Claire always got when she wanted to say something but didn't quite know how to say it. They just need some more information about the program. Don't worry. Rachel reached up and gently ran her hand through Claire's long, wheat-colored hair, tracing the scar on her temple with the tip of her finger. "You shouldn't be this stressed in the morning. It's not good for you." Ishi Yamiko, CEO of Seabridge Operations in Manila, stood motionless, watching through the conference window, her arms folded tightly against her chest. She pushed a button and the window darkened, shutting out what she didn't want to see. She turned and looked at her stepfather, Vaun Batista. The muscles in his gaunt face tightened. He moved toward the dark conference table, running his bony fingers over its smooth mirrored finish, then sat down at the head. Ishi could see the outward effects of the liver cancer more clearly as she looked deeper into his face. "How close is MI6 to finding out our operations, Father?" He casually brushed a smudge of light discolor from the pants leg of his tailored gray silk suit, the coat once crisp and form-fitting, now hanging loosely over his drooping shoulders. His face grew darker. "The program you purchased from our computer systems has caused more damage than we originally thought. How close are you to getting it connected and out of our financial systems?" She knew he held her responsible as the one who approved the illegal purchase of the program from Justin McKinney. "Our best programs are working on it to correct it." She could feel his wrath underneath his calm demeanor. She needed to redirect him. "Who is the traitor?" who gave MI6 the information, Father. He looked toward his trusted aide as she watched as the aide left, then looked back at her stepfather. The eyes narrowed and a look of domination swept over his face. The look she had seen many times. Daughter, we must do what we must. As she nodded and took her seat beside him. The aide returned with Fujiyama, a Filipino man of slight build, around 35, as she immediately recognized him as one of the plant supervisors. He entered the room and bowed politely toward Ishi, and then to her stepfather. The only motion for the man to sit. He nodded and took a seat at the end of the table, hands folded, head slightly lowered. As she watched as her stepfather observed and then demanded, how long? The man kept silent, his eyes fixed on the table. As she rose slowly, the same look of dominance reflecting back from her father's face. How long have you betrayed us? Beads of sweat formed on his forehead. He swallowed, continuing to look down, his hands trembling slightly. 6 months. As she stepfather pressed his hands into the table and stood, he glanced directly at her as he left the room. She walked behind Fujiyama, taking the gun with the silencer from the aide's hand. She pointed at the back of Fujiyama's head and fired. The body slumped forward onto the table. Clean it up, she said, handing the gun back to the aide as she left the room. She stood in the lavatory of her private office, glancing only briefly into the mirror, refusing to see, merely checking her face. This was not the first time she killed, and she knew it wouldn't be the last. She began to watch the blood spatter from her arms and hands. The motionless face looked back, the eyes narrowed. She immediately looked down at her blood-smeared arm. He had made her what she was, and now he and everyone else was going to pay. She looked back up at the faceless ghost in the mirror. I am not a monster.
Oh, wow, you have a complicated character there. I love it. Right, I feel like you're maybe channeling some Alley Valley in this.
Oh, yeah. She's my mentor. I didn't put anybody in a meat grinder, just so Allie knows.
Oh, there you go. Okay. All right. We're not stepping on Alley Valley's toes here.
That's right. That's right.
So for those of us who haven't read Moonshadow, tell us a little bit about your intrigue thread. What is it that your characters are after? How does that come together?
Well, actually, Rachel and Claire just want some peace. But unfortunately, because Rachel had her program stolen from her way back in Moonshadow by Justin McKinney, who sold it to Ishi Yumiko, now she has to deal with it because she's put a trigger in it, and it's messed up that company's whole system and exposed them to MI6. So she is out to get Rachel so that she can correct that and get it corrected. So that's really the intrigue, is the interaction between her and Rachel.
Awesome. All right, there you go. For those of you who needed a little bit of context, please do read Moonshadow. I have set the link in the chat roll for you. If you haven't, this is book 2 in that series, and we have book 3 on the way as well.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Up next, we have Ashley Bartlett. Yep.
Hey, pals.
Hello. Susie, if you just hit mute, perfect. Excellent. Hey, Ashley. So I hear you have a series too, is that right?
I do. It's true.
Yeah, something, Braddock, Cash.
Yes. So this book is Journey to Cash that I'm going to be reading from. There it is.
Awesome.
And it's the last in the Cash Braddock series.
Oh,
So as I mentioned earlier, my character's a drug dealer. So this is the culmination of her journey in that.
You know, I asked the opening question about advice because I wanted to hear what you would say. What would a drug dealer, what advice would they give? I was so curious. So you didn't disappoint. All right. Take it away whenever you're ready.
All right. So like I said, this is the final book in the Cash Braddock series. And the book starts with the reappearance of Cash's mother, who she hasn't seen in 23 years. Laurel, her ex-girlfriend, and Henry, her old business partner, who apparently wants to kill her and Laurel because he's an ass. So it's kind of a bummer. So Cash has just met with the police to review what is going on in, with her homicidal ex-partner. We could hear the Mario Kart music before we even opened the door. Lane and Andy had cleared the living room floor and covered it in pillows and blankets. A reverse fort, if you will. Lane was lying on her stomach with her feet crossed in the air behind her. Andy had pulled a cushion off the couch to set up a lounge chair against the couch front. Oh man, staying in the weekend at your house is the best. Nate bumped his shoulder against mine. Guys, I want in on the next game. He vaulted over the couch and landed on one of the remaining seat cushions. Lane and Andy made grunting noises in affirmation. I grabbed a beer and went out back. Robin turned at the sound of the door. How did it go? Okay, they don't have any info and we're going to have a cop babysitter until they sort it out. She sighed. Oh, fun. Could be worse. I sat next to her. She gave me a questioning look. I could have a seemingly perfect woman pretend to be my girlfriend, but really she's an undercover cop investigating me. Or I could have my secret girlfriend actually be a cop who is here to use the cover of protecting me so she can spend the night, but then she experiences such cognitive dissonance from being in a relationship with me that she leaves, literally abandoning the city she's lived in her whole life. What an oddly specific hypothetical of worseness. I'm imaginative. I like that about you, she said. Aw, thanks. So I take it the gallery opening went well, aside from the hypothetical ex-girlfriend showing up. Yeah, Kira already sold like 6 pieces. I'm so proud of you, Cash. Robin took my hand and held it. You've done something really cool. Thanks, I smiled. Coming from Robin, it mattered. I need to tell you something. I need friend advice. What's up? A couple hours before the gallery opening, my mother showed up here. Robin cocked her head and stared at me. The realization slowly overtook her expression until she uttered an erudite, Huh? Yep, that mother. No, she said it very authoritatively, like she'd considered all the possibilities and simply decided against my mother reappearing. Yeah. What did she want? Was it weird? How did she look? I thought she was dead. She wants to get to know me, and it was super fucking weird. I kind of thought she was dead too. Wasn't she a drug addict? Robin asked. Oh yeah, big time. She looks fine now. Clean. Happy. That's wild. What are you going to do? I don't know. That's why I'm telling you about it. What the hell do I do? I asked. How did you leave it? Kira called with the gallery thing, and I pretended I had to leave right away. Nice. Very mature. She told me she would like to hear from me. I guess I should call her. Should I call her? If you want to, Robin shrugged. It's totally up to you. If you're curious, then go for it. If you're not, it's okay to say no thanks. There's not really anything I want from her. That's good. It means you'll be more impartial if you do call her. I feel like I should care more than I do. Maybe your lack of feelings has all just been leading to this moment. Robin sipped her beer. Or, you're a deeply broken person because your mother abandoned you at a young age and that's why you lack normative emotional responses as an adult. It's a real toss-up. I guess we'll never know. She held out her beer and I tapped mine against it. The door behind us opened. We turned in time to watch Andy, Lane, and Nate rush outside. Mom, guess what? What, bud? We're going to put wood slats in the back of Gracie Ray, Andy said. Nate and Lane nodded enthusiastically. Robin looked at me in question. I shrugged. I thought that was the plan all along, Robin said. So did I. A week after getting the truck for her birthday, Andy declared that she was going to replace the wood in the bed. It had been 7 months. No, yeah, but we were waiting because I had to save up for supplies, and then we were waiting because of the weather. But look, Andy pointed at the sky. It's summer, Lane said. It certainly was. Great. What do I need to do? Robin asked. Nothing, honestly, Nate said. Yeah, we just need to make a hardware store run. You guys don't mind? Robin glanced at Nate and Lane. It'll be fun, Lane said. Yeah, plus the lady folks need an escort. Nate nodded confidently. Hey, Nate, what's the difference between oak and pine? Lane asked. Excellent question. Andy, why don't you take this one? Nate clapped his hand on Andy's shoulder. Oh no, Andy made a pained face. I couldn't possibly use my lady brain to understand something so complex. Right you are. Well, we better go. He gestured grandly to the door. Lane crossed her arms. Hey, Nate, what's the difference between an orbital sander and a belt sander? If you have to ask me, maybe you're not qualified to do this, he said. Lane grinned. Hey, Nate, should we stain or varnish the wood? Yes? He held the door open in the hope Lane would stop asking him questions. I turned to Robin as they left. There's no part of this that can go wrong. She nodded very seriously. So I know the mom reappearance is a big deal and all, but can we discuss the Laurel reappearance? Robin asked. We could, but what if we didn't? Or conversely, what if we did? Fine. What do you want to know? Robin sat up straighter. Everything. What did she say? What did you say? How did she look? Was it weird? Are you still in love with her? Oof. Okay, she said Henry attacked her and she didn't want me to hear it from someone else. Why would that matter? I don't know. It seemed like a stretch. And what did you say? That it was shitty to disappear and then drop a bomb, then disappear again? And she agreed it was shitty and left. So why did she really show up? I shrugged. I don't know, man. I've been asking myself the same question since last night. Maybe she was scared. You said she looked really bad. I took a sip of beer and sat with that hypothesis for a minute. Like she was looking for comfort? Yeah, you two kind of built that habit. Even if you're doing well, having someone try to kill you with their bare hands would mess you up. Maybe she just wanted to feel safe. That is not helpful. Why not? I just solved it. I'm a genius. Yeah, but in a way that makes me want to heal her and also fucking pisses me off because she gave up that right. And why do I give a shit? She's a dick. So I'm pissed at myself in addition to being pissed at her. So I guess that answers my other question. Which one? Are you still in love with her? No, I said. And it's an obvious yes.
Oh man, Cash Braddock. So tell me a little bit about this series, Ashley. Is it all the various machinations of Cash's love life, or is there more going on?
So it starts with, this is a spoiler, so if you haven't read the series, well, it's already spoiled. Sorry, people. It starts with Cash, who is a drug dealer, starting to date this woman who seems perfect in every way, almost like she was chosen to be an undercover cop investigating her. And so then, of course, she finds out that Laurel has been investigating her. And so we kind of get this look at Cash realizing that maybe dealing drugs is not the most moral, good, righteous choice, but also her girlfriend who has to look at whether or not being a cop is a good, moral, righteous choice. And we see them both change in that because you can't date someone who is your moral opposite. It just doesn't work. So either your morals have to shift or the other person does or you do, or sometimes all three. So that's where we are.
This is the book where we finally find out how it all ends.
And everyone can stop being mad at me.
Alrighty. Okay, next up we have Julie Cannon.
Hello.
From the last First Kiss. I have a little story about this book. The first version of this cover, the artist mixed up your title, and she wrote the first Last Kiss, and I was like, oh no, wrong book. That's not a story anyone wants from Julie Cannon. So we had to quickly change it before I sent you the cover. But this is a romance, and this is the last First Kiss that these two characters will ever have. So yeah, give us a little context for your reading and take it away whenever you're ready.
Sure, thanks, Sandy. So you're right, this is the last First Kiss. This is book number 20. Who would have thought all those years ago that it'd be number 20? But it's really set in a lesbian resort in a tropical island. I don't know how much better you could get, how much better life could get than that. My two characters, the first one is Matt. She is the widow of the first out lesbian who is going to win the Medal of Honor. And there's just all kinds of external pressures that go with that from the Army and her in-laws and associated other people. And then the other, my other character, Kelly, she has just recently found her girlfriend cheating on her and decided to take her side of the trip to this tropical island and upgrade to first class. And this scene is the first time that they really talked to each other. They saw each other on the plane and some sparks flew, but this is really the first time that they actually spoke with each other. Kelly had stalled long enough. She'd been in the water too long and she felt her skin getting pink. She'd been ready to get out a while ago when she noticed the woman from the plane sitting in the chair right next to her. Why was she hesitating? It wasn't like her to shy away from something or uncomfortable or someone so beautiful. She'd sensed the attraction between them, and for crying out loud, she was single. She couldn't just go back to her room because her key was in her bag tucked under her chair. She wondered again about the woman's relationship status, as she was obviously on the beach alone. Kelly managed to get to her chair and reach for her book before the woman noticed her. She couldn't see her eyes behind the dark wraparound glasses, but she felt the woman's eyes glide over her before she broke into a dazzling smile. "Do you come here often?" the woman asked, sliding her sunglasses down her nose. Her blue eyes were more vivid than the first time she saw them, the color of the cloudless sky overhead. Kelly couldn't help but laugh. "Does that line usually work for you?" "Actually, I'm a little out of practice," the woman admitted, blushing a little. Kelly's antenna extended. Is that because you're married?" The woman didn't look away. "No." "Long-term girlfriend?" "No." "Are you going to tell me that you never have to make the first move? That attitude would really be disappointing." "No, that would make me a conceited asshole, wouldn't it?" Kelly tilted her head and raised her eyebrows questioningly. Excuse me. "Widow," the woman said. "Oh, I'm sorry for your loss." Kelly had said that same phrase before to other people, and it sounded so trite, but what else was there to say? You had to say something. "Thank you. I didn't mean to." The woman waved Kelly's apology. She waved it off from her apology for her flippant bantering, but how could she have known? She couldn't have. "No worries," she said. "It's been a long time." She extended her hand. "Matt Parker." Kelly wiped her damp palm on her towel before shaking it. Kelly knew some. Much prettier than 6B. 6B? "Your seat on the flight from Atlanta to Miami." "Oh, yeah, right," Kelly said. Warmth spread through her that Matt had remembered her. "And you were the woman on the plane." Kelly watched Matt's eyes light up, as she suspected hers did. "Just the woman? Well, if I tell you you were just the really hot woman on the plane, will that make your head so big you block my sun? I came to get a tan." Matt laughed, again, a hearty laugh that made Kelly's stomach tingle. "I'll try to keep control over myself." Matt's eyes skimmed over her body again. "And the tan you have looks pretty good." Kelly warmed all over, glad she'd gone ahead and bought the new red bikini and chosen to wear it today. "At the risk of ending our interesting conversation, it appeared you were by yourself on the plane and you aren't saving a chair for anyone." Matt motioned. "Are you here alone?" "Yeah. Due to circumstances that will not ruin my day. It's just me," Kelly replied. "I'll pose that question right back at you. My friend said I needed to get away, so they gave me this trip." "Wow," Kelly said, squeezing some sunscreen on her palm. "Do they need any more friends? I'd dump mine in a heartbeat and go with yours." She watched Matt's eyes follow her hands as she spread lotion over her legs, and more than just her legs were heating up. "Well, you can probably ask them later. They're here with me, but they were still asleep when I left this morning." "Matt, that's an interesting name. Is it short for something?" Kelly asked, her voice a little raspy because she was trying to banish the image of Matt lazing in bed. "Mattingly, an old family name. Lucky me," she said sarcastically. "Well, in the 4 minutes I've known you, I can say that it suits you." "I appreciate that, but it's caused me more confusion than any kid should have to endure." Kelly thought for a moment, imagining boys and girls being separated by name. Matt was probably always in the wrong line. "I see your point," she said. "I'm going to be nosy and ask why you're on a beautiful beach by yourself. If none of your friends wanted to come, you should dump them." "I was bringing my girlfriend, but when she decided she'd rather fuck my best friend than be here with me, I rescinded my offer." "Ouch," Matt said, grimacing. Surprisingly, I'm not broken up over it. Kelly had realized that was true while driving to the airport. I traded her ticket for one in first class. I already had the time off, the room was paid for, so here I am, sitting next to the hot woman from the plane on my very first day. She lay back in her chair, her legs outstretched, and caught Matt looking at her breasts again. She put her sunglasses on, but not before saying, "Don't run off." Kelly's phone ringing interrupted any further conversation. She glanced at it and swore. "Work?" Matt asked. Kelly frowned. X. Girlfriend or best friend? Best friend, Kelly replied, hitting the bright red hang-up icon. She turned off the ringer and put her phone face down on the table between them. Right now it's neck and neck as to who has left the longest voicemail. Have you spoken to either one of them? Matt asked. Not sure why, but curious nonetheless. No, I have nothing to say to them now, or ever. But the gist of their long, expansive messages is basically that it's not what it would look like. Kelly turned to face Matt, sliding her sunglasses down her nose to look at her. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure," Matt answered, curious where Kelly would take the conversation, but surprisingly eager to go anywhere with her. "If you walked into your bedroom and saw your best friend fucking your girlfriend, what would you think?" Yikes. Not much room for interpretation on that case. Matt regained her breath and tried to keep her eyes on Kelly's, but the lure of cleavage at the top of Kelly's bikini was too tempting. Matt's gaze dropped for just a second, and when it returned, the knowing look on Kelly's face made Matt blush. "Thank you," Kelly said. "Any girl in my situation likes to know that they're still attractive." Matt's heart rate spiked. That's definitely not a problem." "Well, obviously Suzanne didn't think so." "Well, obviously Suzanne is an idiot," Matt said. "Other than what you must have gone through, I'm glad you're here." Kelly studied her for so long, Matt started to get nervous. Shit. I'm sorry. Here you are, a woman who'd been planning a romantic getaway with her girlfriend, and recently found out that the girlfriend was cheating on her with her best friend, and I'm hitting on you. That's so not cool," Matt said apologetically. Kelly smiled, and Matt's heart skipped again. "Actually," Kelly said, just before sliding her sunglasses back up her nose and settling back in her chair, "actually, it is." Go.
Yes, it is. That's awesome. This is the panel for witty banter. I love that. Even though they both have quite tragic backstories there, Julie Cannon. Could it get any worse?
No, probably not. Nope, probably not.
It's about to get a whole lot better for them. I just know it.
Absolutely. They're in paradise. What more can you ask for?
Oh, I assume that you wrote this book before the start of the pandemic.
I did. My wife Laura and I, we went to this tropical island. It wasn't a lesbian resort. We went to the Turks and Caicos, and we had so much fun there. This was probably summer before last, I think, and we had so much fun there. Everything that we did somehow found its way into the book. So yeah, it was much earlier than the pandemic.
Awesome. I love that when you've been to a place and you can write about it. Real genuineness. Okay, if everyone else can turn on their microphones and their videos. I am hoping that Genevieve, McCluer will join us at some point, but she's having some technical difficulties. So if any of our audience has questions for our authors, please put them in the Q&A box. I will start us off with an oldie but a goodie. What inspired you to write this story? I'm going to start with Missouri, and she will pass it to the next author, who will pass it to the next author while I help Genevieve. Thanks, guys.
Well, if anybody's looked at the book, there's a dedication in the front to some friends of mine, Karen and Renee. And Renee is a musician in a band called Blame Sally. And anyway, we were at their house having dinner, and they told us this really funny story about how they met. And I started calling this meeting that they had, this first meeting, the Mandolin Lunch. And then I was like, oh my gosh, that's a great book title. And then I started thinking, what kind of story would I write that would work with that title? And I don't know. That was the inspiration behind it, was their story. So I kind of put in the book, I put a musician and an artist together. And the premise is they have to share a classroom in this small rural school. And, they start off not getting along, but then their romance is kind of a slow build. And I really ended up in the end really liking both of these characters together. And I actually gave an early copy of the book to Karen and Renee to read, and they liked it. So I think it was a success. But I have to give a shout out to Renee, because she helped me with a lot of the music parts and a lot of the details about what it is to perform for an audience, what it is to play a mandolin. The more specifics I think you can have in a story, the more real it feels. So anyway.
That's awesome.
Do what? Sorry.
That's awesome. It's such a unique instrument.
Yeah, it is a very unique instrument. And I learned a lot about mandolins talking to her about it. I will pass the torch to Ashley.
All right, so it's actually Sandy's fault that I wrote this book.
Of course.
It's always Sandy's fault. We all know this. I sent in the description for Cash Braddock, the first book in the series, and then I had a one-sentence description of like a few more books that I could put in the series. And like a dick, she sent me a contract for 4 books. So then I had to like come up with a story. It was very inconvenient, and I don't like it when you make me create things, Sandy.
So bad of me. I'm so sorry for that, Ashley.
Yes, I will take the apology to heart. Thanks a lot. With this book, I struggled a lot because obviously we have seen a lot of analysis recently of what it means to be a cop, and the systemic structure of law enforcement. And I had already built this whole world where I had created characters that were not necessarily bad people. And since I do tend to think that cops should all quit their jobs because they're part of a system that is not functioning, I had to figure out a way to get my own moral standpoint across. And so that was a bit of a challenge for me when I was actually in the book. I threw a lot of tantrums, and my editor got me through most of them, which was nice. But it was something interesting to consider while we're living in the moment that we are currently in. Yeah. I am going to pass it to Julie.
I think I kind of answered the question already. We were in the Turks and Caicos on Providenciales, one of the islands, and I looked around and thought, this would make a really good book. I'll just turn everything into how 2 women would do this, and it just kind of went from there.
You write a lot of books at the beach, though, Julie. Does it have a special? Is it a special place for you?
It is, and my next book is even more so about the beach. But it is. There's just something calming about the water. I think a lot of people are like that, just sitting in the water, in the beach, on a lawn chair, the water lapping up over your ankles and your knees and your behind, and it's really calming to me, and I really enjoy it. And plus, where else can you see a bunch of half-naked women? And I think that's a good thing too.
Awesome. Suzie, how about you? What inspired you to write this series?
Well, actually, it didn't start out as a series. It started off as a 1-book book. But when I got done with it, I felt there was just so much more for Rachel and Claire as characters, and the secondary characters that are involved with them. There's just so much to the story. So it kind of came naturally to write the 2nd book. And when I thought about the 2nd, I realized that their story still wasn't done yet, that there was 1 more book, and the 3rd book Shadow Dancers is the final book in that series. But so that's pretty much what, like I said, I didn't really start off to write a series. It just kind of took off because the characters I felt had so much more to say and do.
Awesome. I love that. Happens organically. All right. We have been graced with Genevieve McCluer, who is reading from her January release, Thor. There it is. Awesome cover. So we are going to hear her read, and then she can answer our question. If everyone else can turn off their video and audio. And Genevieve, go ahead and set the stage for your reading. Tell everyone a little bit about your book, and then whenever you're ready.
All right. I am so sorry for being late. I was having trouble getting the link to work. But okay, Thor, I'll even answer the question everybody else is answering too, was, despite having literally nothing to do with that now, originally based on a Norse mythology take on Love Actually. It is now not even slightly similar to that, but that was the original idea. But it's about a sorority girl in Portland who finds out that she's the reincarnation of Thor and that her new girlfriend is the reincarnation of Thor's wife, Sif, and they get into a decent bit of shenanigans over that, and my reading is from them first finding out, where these two big scary guys, like twice their size in armor, show up at a bar and they've been showing up all over the place, and now they finally cornered them. But okay. They're clearly delusional, Emily snapped. That isn't enough of an answer? Hannah chewed on her lip, looking between Emily and the lunatics. What alternative do we have? They're not hurting us. They're just confused. Let's prove them wrong and they'll leave us alone. It sounded like there was more to it, but Hannah apparently wasn't going to say, and Emily certainly wasn't leaving her alone here. Fine, but if they kill us, it's your fault. Hannah shrugged. I can live with that. Let's get drinking. Magni slid a chair over. He seemed reluctant to sit in the booth, maybe trying to give them some degree of space. It was a welcome change. First things first, since your death, I am the strongest living being in the universe. If you can even come close to me in might, then that should show you something. Well, if I don't know how strong you are, that doesn't tell me much. Hannah offered a cheeky grin. Emily stared. Had she run off and had a few dozen beers when she wasn't looking? Very well. Look out that window. He pointed to a car on the street. The chair shrilly squeaked as he moved, heading outside. He stood next to the car, a perfectly normal sedan. Then it was suddenly several feet in the air in one of his massive hands. Hannah stared, her mouth hanging open. That can't be possible. And they think I can do that? It's ridiculous. Emily blinked repeatedly, trying to wake herself up from this dream. The car's alarm started blaring as he set it down. He strolled back inside and took his seat again, a self-satisfied smirk on his lips. I don't know why that thing is making that noise, but are you convinced? It hasn't cursed me, has it? Can we shut the alarm off? A voice sounded from under a nearby table. Okay. A man peeked up and pressed a button on a key fob, and the alarm ended with a chirp. There is no need to fear, Magni insisted. I intend no harm to anyone. Please, beer wench, come back out and serve. If I'm your mother, I raised you horribly, Emily spat back. This was met with a mighty laugh that echoed through the little establishment. Everyone, please, relax and enjoy your food and drink. I shall pay for all of this and any damage we cause. Producing a heavy cloth bag from inside his armor, he tossed it onto the counter. I believe that should cover everything. The bartender climbed up from behind the bar and untied the bag, causing a gold coin to slip out onto the ground. I'll have to ask my manager. Very well. Can I call them? Of course. There was a very good reason he didn't know what phones were. The bartender pressed more than 3 buttons on his cell phone, so it was likely he wasn't calling the cops. He probably just wanted that tip. Emily could hardly blame him. She was tempted to grab that fallen coin. How do you want to test my strength? Hannah asked. I'm not really a fighter. No, those are words I never thought I'd hear my father say. Another laugh bellowed forth from his belly. Modi, sit and watch while I show you the truth of Mimir's words. This is our father. I would know those eyes anywhere. I trust you know how to arm wrestle? Emily leaned back, rolling her eyes in disbelief. Somehow it always came back to arm wrestling in this bar. Hannah nodded slowly. I have no idea why I'm going along with this. You're lucky I love arm wrestling and drinking. That's our father, Magni said. With a groan, Hannah thudded her elbow on the table and held her hand out, staring into the gray eyes of the man who claimed to be their son. There was no way she could win. She couldn't lift a car, but at least she could prove him wrong, and then they'd stop harassing them, right? Are you ready, Father? I'd be more ready if you stopped calling me that. He paused, as if only now realizing how weird that must sound. Then, do you have names? It would feel strange to call our parents such, but if that is your preference, I believe we can accommodate you. Can we not, Modi? He nodded. We can, brother. I'm Hannah, she said, her hand already extended. Are we seriously doing this? Emily asked. These guys keep showing up places. It's just all too ridiculous. I need answers. Groaning, she shrugged. Fine. I'm Emily. Hannah, Emily. It is nice to meet you. Magni took Hannah's hand, his grip looking likely to crush the tiny girls. Emily dared not breathe. I'm glad we can be civil now, Modi said. I wish we'd known this all from the beginning. It really is a pleasure to meet you, and I hope that we haven't offended you too gravely. No, it's okay, Hannah said, sounding far too eager for the little contest. Let's do this. Magni's face tensed, his lip trembling as his hand pushed against Hannah's. She didn't move, and she appeared as cheerful as she had a moment earlier. Hannah was weirdly strong, but this man had just lifted a car. Are you holding back? Hannah's voice was soft, almost scared, with a strength that reassured Emily. Whatever was going on, no matter how crazy this was, at least Hannah would be here, and having a super strong girlfriend was hardly the worst fate in the world. A little, he admitted, his voice sounding strained. He looked to be redoubling his efforts, as veins popped out on his head and arm, and sweat beaded on his forehead. Hannah met his strength, letting out a chuckle as she leaned in, gritting her teeth. Emily's annoyance gave way to staring at her girlfriend's biceps with undisguised lust. Well, I am too. Emily swallowed, not believing the words. She really wasn't struggling? This wasn't possible. Modi's hand thudded on the table, the wood splintering under them as Hannah jumped to her feet and cheered. He stared at her, his jaw dropping. But you don't even have your belt. What a weird response to having your ass kicked, she laughed. Does this mean I have lightning powers? Okay, and that's Thor.
Awesome. I love it. There's so much going on in that scene, and I don't know how I would feel if I turned out to be Thor, but possibly have a reaction quite like Hannah. That's going to be quite an arc she has there. Does she eventually accept her role? Maybe not have to read the book. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't have to read the book, but I will say in a way.
In a way? Okay. All right. That is vague enough that you all have to buy the book. Awesome. If everyone else could turn on their microphones and their videos. Thank you all so much for being here. And to Suzie and Missouri and Ashley and Julie and Genevieve, thank you. And we will see you next month for BSB Preview. Have a great night.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks, you guys. I enjoyed it.